mallets have driven, the golf industry as well as the tour. About 65% of the players use mallets, but there always is this other 40%, 35% of the players that like a blade. And so for us, it was time for us to enter that category, and to enter it the right way, it needed time. We needed to have the investment. We needed to have the right, not just the right equipment, but the right vision that we wanted to do and the inspiration. So, it's a tough category, and you can't enter it just on the whim. You really have to really have your strategy as to what you want. And what this does allow for us to get in this machined category, especially the fine milled category of putters, you had to have a plan, and this plan was always about doing everything the right way, the perfect way, and about precision. And it's complete opposite of what Spyder was. Spyder was always organic. In this particular case, on this side of the fence, especially with this reserve line, it had to be all about precision. So completely different. So the inspiration was really looking at this category. It was our tour players, it was our customers that were asking for us to get involved more in this side of the fence, because like I said, it's there's still a large chunk of players and golfers that are out there that enjoy a blade putter that's finely tuned. The first and most important was the name Reserve. We wanted to elevate it, and yes, it's within our TP franchise, but within that, we wanted to call upon the name Reserve. Reserve stood for a better product. A Reserve is a more elevated product, and that's why when you look in the back cabinet, you don't see TP, you see the R. You see this nice circle R. We want people to remember Reserve. Now, when you start selecting all the different model names, I'm not sure players remember always the model name. First and foremost was the Reserve name. So we have a very simple approach to our modeling and our naming. So we have 3 blades, so we have a B1, B2, B3. The second number that you see in this particular case is a number that refers to the hosel. So we have a B11. So that 1 behind the B1 stands for that plumber's neck. We have a B13. That refers to this, again, the hosel. In this case, this is a B2 here with a flow neck. So it's, we tried to be very simple, B1, B2, B3. Same thing on the mallets. We have a M2, M3, M4 mallet. So we tried to be extremely simplified on our modeling and our naming. We've made blades in the past. It was under the TP umbrella, and under that TP umbrella, they were just casted. They were done for a price point. We sell those for around $200 today. It's a great price point, a great product for that particular price point, but when you start to look at the tour players are used to machine parts. So as we wanted to start looking at this Reserve line, it was all about machining and doing everything that we don't do on the TP line, which then meant not just machining everything right down to the right radius, as well as the right precision of everything, all the lines being exact. There was no polishing being done here. We control everything on it through the machining that we do. So it's to the eye, especially the better player, they like to look at parts that have that precision and that perfection. And that's what Reserve is all about. It's a completely different category. Yes, it's a blade, but it's a different blade. Yes, it's a higher price point at $400 versus $200, but it's all about the machining that we're doing. We're not polishing anymore. So we maintain those sharp edges. We maintain the radii on the bumpers. That's what the players get excited about. We're a big believer in roll. And if you look at Spyder, it's, when we talk about Spyder, we talk about MOI, we talk about roll, we talk about stability. When we talk about Reserve, it's different meanings. And when we talk about performance, we talk about the machining of the product itself, maintaining all the edges and the lines. But then when we come down to the roll, we come down to the face, we were able to maintain a little bit of our DNA, and our DNA was always about our groove and providing the best roll. So one of the things that we looked at this face in a lot of different combinations, whether it should have a groove or not. So we were very honest with ourselves. We talked to a lot of our tour players, and one of the things was most important to them was sound. So we really started to study sound and what happens at sound. So we looked at the category itself, and there are a lot of putters out there in this category that do not have grooves, and they have machined the face, and so they fully machine the face. So some are coarse, some are not. So the more coarse we get on the face, change the sound. That's the first thing that we started to see. And we started hearing from players that when they hit the ball a little bit high in the face or low in the face, there was a different sound versus the middle. So we do hit the ball a little bit all over the face, so there was different sounds, and we started really researching all the different putters that are out there today. And so where we landed was we looked at a groove. We wanted to maintain our DNA, so we looked at the groove that we have today, and especially we looked at about 15 different combinations of not just the depth, but the width of the groove, and that too was changing the sound. So we wanted to have our own tailor-made sound. That's one of the things that we wanted. So we tested all these with the best players that were out there today, and where we landed was the certain depth and a certain width of the groove that had the tailor-made sound that we like today. Now, there's less surface contact with the groove, and that less surface contact creates this crisp sound, but it's just a little bit softer, crisp sound. That's what the players were telling us that they preferred. Sometimes they can get a little loud and too loud, and so we have this nice tailor-made sound that we're excited about, especially with our groove. So I kind of refer to it a little bit as like a sound groove, because that's what we played with. We wanted to have the perfect sound. I think if you look at this category, and if you just look at all putters in general, just in the US market, let's call it about a $200 million market. About 120 of that, 120 million is non-milled putters, which were spider balls. In this category of 80 million is where all the machine parts are, all the machine putters are located, are in this bucket. And most of those are led by blades, called anywhere between 65–70%. So heavily in this machine category is blades. On the other side of the fence, which is what I talked about, the larger bucket is where spider is. But in this bucket of machining, this is, like I said, is heavily driven by blades. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to prove to golfers that we can make a blade putter, and that's what it was all about. So we wanted to stay in this category of machining. It's a big investment, and so for us to invest in this category, it's a long-term investment. So we're in this category for the next not just 5–10 years, but it's a category for us now to compete with the best players, the best consumers that are out there, and showcase that we can make a blade putter. That time is today, and that's why we're excited about bringing out a machine line of putters under the Reserve name from TaylorMade. We really rounded out the line. We have 3 blades, we have 3 mallets, but we have 9 different combinations with hosels. So we're excited there. Now, for those players and the best players that are out there, we do have a combination of different hosels that provide different toe hangs. We have different sight lines that are available throughout the product. But what we see in our fitting, as you talked about fitting, when we talk about fitting, changing a hosel can change where we line the ball. So what our eyes are telling us, we might be looking outside the hole, and by changing the hosel, all of a sudden we're inside the hole. By changing a sight line in the back cavity to on top, or on top to the back cavity, we can move from outside the hole or left or right and go back into inside the hole. So it's about not just where we line up, but how we return the putter. We see it all the time with the best players. Every time we have a player fitting, sometimes they come in and they're struggling on their putter and they've changed. And so we have the data and we can go back to, this is what you putted the best with, here's where you line, and here's how you return it back to the face back to square. And we want to make sure what happens mostly, because 93% of the result from a 14-foot putt is bringing that putter back to square. So, but that can all change with different, not just, we're so used to talking about toe hang, but it's about just the hosel, what our eyes are telling us, different sight lines. So it's a big combination. Fitting is so important though on putting, because it's so about precision, right? So when we just look at the hole from 14 feet, it's 0.7 outside the hole. It's the edge. That's all. So less than a degree is what we have to line up. So, we see different strokes all the time. Probably our number one stroke that we see is 3 degrees outside in, but that face is 1 degree open. So this is over hundreds of thousands of golfers that we've had come through our fittings. And so that's number one. So that 1 degree open is missing a hole. Now the second stroke that we see all the time is 2 degrees inside out, but 1 degree closed. both those that I just talked about are number 1 and 2, but they're both missing a hole. So what happens is what we want to do is make sure we fit and get that player that gets that, be able to bring that return back to square. So depending upon toe hang, depending upon the hosel, it's all important. So we do change the weight of the weights that you see in the sole, depending upon if you're 35, 34, 33. As the putter length gets shorter, we need to compensate the head. The head actually gets heavier. So that's what we do with the weight. So it's all about fitting and getting that back to the right weight for the customer. When we first came out with Spider, I'll give you a quick story here. When we first came out with Spider about 15 years ago, when we first put the first big Spider out there, everybody was used to a blade putter at that time. Blades are typically like D8, D9 type of swing weights, a little bit on the lighter side. But our giant putters were like in the E1, E2, E3 range. And first off, the players wanted something lighter, but then quickly, as you look at the bigger head, it just seemed like it needs to be heavier. That's what our mind was telling us. It really wasn't, but mallets seem to be a little bit heavier today across the board. Most mallets are more in that kind of, let's just call it an E1, E0 type range, but blades seem to be a little bit lighter. It's just the perception of what blades are. So mostly in that D, you can be about D8, D9 range. So just a couple swing weight points, but it's just a perception that something a little bit smaller package, probably a little bit lighter weight. So usually typically the head weights are a little bit lighter as well than say a Spider putter.